Welcome to spring. I am David DeMars, and thank you again for joining us for this first quarter edition of A Quarter's Worth. I am investment advisor representative at DeMars Financial Group, and I'm joined today by Peter Bach, one of our chief investment analysts. Peter, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, David.
In this edition, we'd like to pull out two highlights from our newsletter that we address. One of them is the Trump train. We'd like to talk about that. And the second one is the potential derailment of the current markets. So what's interesting is the first is the Trump train. Peter, from November of 9th of 2016 through the end of the year, the S&P 500 had a return of 3.49%. And since the beginning of the year through March 31st, we've added an additional 4.65%. That's quite a good run in the last couple of months.
It is.
And that tacked on into addition to the previous years. The question that is often being asked is, this run must be over, right?
Well, a lot of people ask that, and in the newsletter we bring up a really important point, and that is that whereas our instincts tell us that once a market has run so far, a stock has run so far, it's got to be time for it to take a rest. Well, some recent studies show that a market that has doubled is twice as likely to double again before reversing than it is to go from a double and be cut in half. Mm-hmm. So twice as likely to keep on going. And that is the old maxim from the industry that says the trend is your friend. You stick with the momentum until the momentum is stopped or you're leaving gains on the table.
So there's plenty of reason to be optimistic with this market going forward. However, we are in the 9th year of this bull market. Mm-hmm. And she's getting a little bit long in the tooth, so to speak. So at 96 months, this is the second longest bull market since World War II. That's pretty impressive, but no bull market in the modern era has lasted 10 years. So the question should be asked, the clock might be ticking, what type of items could really derail this market? From our newsletter, we've highlighted 3 different types of outlines that we feel could be affected. First of all is lending. The second one is government spending. And the third is interest rates. Why don't we take those one at a time? Let's first of all talk about lending.
Lending is very important. As we all know, a lot of our gains in the market and so forth have been fueled by cheap credit the last 8 to 10 years. And will that continue? We don't know. That's above our pay grades to know that. But lending is critical. We just recently got a Federal Reserve report that shows that lending has slowed down the last 3 months, and that's the first time in 6 years that lending has slowed. So that's not something to jump out of the market for, but it's certainly something to keep our eyes on, and that's what we do, is we keep our eyes on those various pieces of the marketplace. The other part of the credit markets that has me a bit concerned is the over an abundance of credit being issued to subprime borrowers. And people may have read some of the news lately that talks about the auto industry and how it's been fueled. And they've had great sales, by the way, but a lot of that has been fueled by the fact that there's been cheap credit. And cheap credit to people who maybe didn't deserve any credit. A third of the auto loans today are sold to subprime and deep subprime credits. Just seems like a problem waiting to happen, but we don't know how it's going to turn out. But I think it is a potential problem.
Sounds certainly reminiscent of 2007. Subprime, people aren't deserving of those loans, don't have the credit to back those loans. We'll wait and see.
Yeah.
The next one is with respect to government spending. Let's talk about that for a little bit.
Okay. One of the Trump administration's platforms during the election time was infrastructure spending, and getting out there and using some fiscal policy as opposed to just the monetary policy, and trying to stimulate the spirits of the market, so to speak.
Yep.
And they ran into a problem a couple weeks ago because part of what they have to do is they have to have a balanced budget. And in order to do that, in order to have some infrastructure spending, they've got to have some cuts somewhere along the way. Part of their restructuring of the Affordable Care Act, the health care plan, with their revised version of it, was to pull dollars out of that plan so that they could use that for infrastructure spending. Now that has been tabled, at least for the time being, and I do think they will come up with something as a replacement or a repeal of or what have you of the Affordable Care Act. We don't know when that's going to be now. They tried to get it through quickly. It didn't happen. A lot of the Affordable Care Act repeal or replacement was going to be dollars for infrastructure. That's all up in the air right now.
Yep. So, Affordable Care Act, there's a lot of government spending that will be taking place that's in the mix. Time will tell if that will be implemented or not. The last time that we kind of think could be a certainly potential derail of the markets would be with respect to interest rates. And we've talked about this in our previous newsletters, and we'll probably continue to talk about it. Let's just kind of talk about what that current environment looks like today.
Okay. Well, we just had the Fed just increased rates at their last meeting one more time, and they project two to three more increases this year. We'll have to see whether that comes to being. But even some of the most dovish Fed members, meaning they want to keep interest rates really low, have been out talking it up the last couple of weeks about the fact that they also feel that interest rates need to climb a little bit. This just gives them a little dry powder in case we run into that business cycle recession that we know ultimately will be here. We just don't know when. And if they have no room to move on interest rates, then they're in a really, really tough spot if we do hit a recession. So what they're trying to do is get interest rates up to at least a 3% level before the next recession hits, so that they have some dry powder, some ammo that they can throw at that recession and calm it down before it gets to be a serious problem.
So we talked about interest rates, we talked about government spending, we also talked about lending and what's taking place.
Yeah, and one other thing on the government spending is we've got the current funding of the budget expires the end of this month, the end of April 28th, and that means that if we're going to have a balanced budget, which they're supposed to have, something's got to give. They've got to come up with a new budget. Otherwise, they'll claim, like they've done the last few times, that the government's got to shut down. We're all going home. See you later, folks.
Yep.
We all know it's a partial shutdown because most of the government's still going to run smoothly, and just as it does right now, even if there is a budget crisis that occurs. But they're going to hype it, and that will affect the market. Remember, the markets hate uncertainty more than they hate an answer that they don't really like. Yeah. Uncertainty is the number one issue that the market dislikes, really. I mean, it's just one of those things.
Excellent feedback, Peter. Government spending and what's going to happen with the budget at the end of this month, interest rates, lending, all of these issues will come into play with respect to what may happen in the upcoming months that could derail our current markets.
Absolutely.
Peter, thank you so much for the input. We appreciate always your time and additions to our Quarters Worth newsletters.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So, as we wrap up this edition of A Quarters Worth, we would like to express appreciation to our clients for the trust that they give us in managing their wealth, whether it's our tax strategies or investment strategies or retirement strategies. In the end, we believe it's not so important about what you earn, but what you keep that's important. If you are not a current client of DeMars Financial, we would welcome the opportunity to see if we can add value to your current situation. Please visit our website at www.demarsfinancial.com for more information. Until our next edition, we hope you have a safe and enjoyable spring.